Let me introduce myself. My name is Alba Bertomeu, and although now I'm happily enjoying my retirement, my life hasn't always been that easy. It all started when I was 7. That's when I realized what my purpose in life was. I wanted to become a scientist. I always thought being a scientist meant healing diseases, making colorful laboratory experiments, wearing fancy lab coats, but above all, receiving several Nobel Prizes. As you can imagine, this is not what happened. As soon as I finished my biotechnology degree, I knew that wasn't how my future would be destined to be. Although I had my biotechnology diploma, laboratories were not knocking at my door begging me to work with them. If not working, as jobs were quite difficult to find at that time, I assumed doing an internship in one lab could help me gain some work experience. As I had already expected, offering yourself as a worker without asking for any salary resulted in many positive answers that otherwise would have been neglected. I had found the perfect lab, and although I had to pay a bench fee, I thought every single euro would be worth. Instead, I would find myself working in a lab using animals. Well, not using, but abusing animals in a failed attempt to find a cure of an already well-established disease. I would be spending many hours harming animals that I really loved, and using techniques and methods that I didn't really understand nor comprehend, just doing what I had been asked to do without wondering why. That was totally tearing my heart apart. I needed a change. That's when I decided to look for another job.
Alba shouldn't have to cope with those laboratory animal abuses thanks to the current legislation which regulates animal comfort during experimental procedures. Both European Union law and ethics committees evaluate if the use of animals is worth in each project that is performed.
Well, I'm going back to the story. When I started looking for other jobs, I thought that having worked for more than a year must have had given me the work experience that companies were looking for, but that was not the case. I kept looking for possible jobs for months and months, and the response I was given was that my experience was not enough. How could it be? I didn't understand how it was possible that in order to be employed, I needed experience, but I was not going to get any experience unless I was given a chance. Later, I found out that the reason others were employed instead was because they would get sort of fame by signing papers in which they hadn't been a part of.
As Alba's case, there are many junior researchers who have long assumed that their hirings and promotions depend significantly on the amount of their published work. Even researchers who are just beginning their careers are expected already to have published articles of major significance to the field. That general tendency forces junior researchers to substantially increase their chances of promotions by fragmenting their research findings so that they are published in several journals instead of one. Moreover, sometimes researchers are obliged to sign articles without having been substantially involved in the research in order to increase their number of publications. This common practice receives the name of honorary authorship, and is not only frequent in young researchers but between colleagues which work in the same laboratory.
Anyway, I don't really know how, but I finally connected with a pharmaceutical company that offered me a good job opportunity. Actually, it couldn't be better, as I would be given a pre-doc grant. In other words, I would earn money while doing my PhD work. The only problem was that this was a German company, with all their labs in that country, so I had no other options but to move there. The main building and the place where I would work was located in Bavaria, particularly in a small city called Nuremberg, and do not be scared by its name. For me, the more I would live there, the more I would like it.
Nuremberg is a German city known because of the trials of Nuremberg. After World War II, the medical members of Nazi concentration camps were judged for the atrocities committed against the humanity. They experimented with human patients performing painful and harming interventions whose purpose was not to heal patients but to benefit their own interests. From the trials of Nuremberg, the first code referred to the ethical principles in the investigation with humans was developed, the Nuremberg Code.
My experience abroad couldn't have started better. The lab was great, my workmates were fine, and the work that I was doing couldn't be more exciting. Years passed by, and although I was totally focused on my work, the results that I would get were not the expected ones. That's when I was forced to do one of the worst things I have ever done in my working career, faking up results. Although I was told to do so by my bosses, it was up to me tainting the results of the experiments, as well as biasing them, so it was my responsibility. That is something I shouldn't have done, and that is something I haven't done again. Anyways, some years later, I finally got my DHP and I was ready to go home.
Sometimes researchers are under a huge pressure to publish new results due to the competence in the field looking for the acknowledgement of the scientific community. In that situation, some researchers' results are faked up and shown as promising results when actually they are not. Among many other cases, Alexis Carrel, the scientist who described the basis of human cell culture, was involved in a polemic episode. Blinded by his ambition, Carrel announced the obtaining of an immortal herd cell line from chicken embryo. However, no one could reproduce the protocol described by Carrel, and no one else could establish that claimed immortal herd cell culture. Researchers who tried assumed that the fault of the failures was their lack of abilities compared to Carrel. 50 years after Carrel's announcement, Leonard Hayflick broke the myth and stated that cells have finite lifespan. It still remains unsolved if Carrel incident was a fraud or a simple error. But the key message under Carrel case is the importance of only publishing reproducible results.
And going back to the story, as you may imagine, starting all over again wasn't an easy task. Even though at that time I already was a PhD with experience and a certain renown in my back, from the working point of view, I felt as I was looking for my first job again. All the fame, if you want to call it like that I thought I had in Germany, looked as it had vanished as I was trying to work in Spain. I was kind of shocked by the fact that in any other country in Europe, scientists were treated and paid accordingly to their knowledge and wisdom, whilst in Spain, this wouldn't seem to matter at all. Nevertheless, this is the price I would have to pay if I wanted to go back to my home country. After many months of searching, I finally got a job at a university. It would be partially researching, but also teaching classes. My teaching experience was null, so I had to prepare thoroughly all my classes, spending many more hours than the actual salary I was going to be paid. Although, as far as I could acknowledge at the time, that was an everyday struggle for Spanish scientists.
Last April, Kendall Powell wrote in Nature an article reflecting the current situation of postdocs, which he defines as a broken system. Actually, there is a considerable amount of highly skilled scientists which are the driving force of research field, although they are poorly rewarded and have no opportunities to prosper in academia. The reason which explains this situation is the increasing number of postdocs in sciences in the last decade, which exceeds the number of full-time faculty positions available. This situation is so frequent that even a new term is being used to refer to people who suffer it: permadocs, researchers who see themselves involved in several postdocs, one after the other, for even years.
Motivated by my dauntless intuitions, I decided that, not happy enough with my work at the university, I would set up my own startup at the same time, a company involved in genetic analysis, which was my big passion. That wasn't an easy task, as I would have to divide my time between the research and teaching work at the university with the time at this new company. Moreover, I would also work as a referee for a couple of different papers, so that would also be a huge responsibility. And although in many cases that's a job I would prefer not to do, That was a task I couldn't deny.
When scientists publish their works in a given journal, then they are asked to act as referees to other works. That's the way it is. Alba, as a PhD, has several articles published in different journals, so that she has to accomplish with her duty, although she's not compensated for it, and even if it's an extra work for her.
Well, incredibly, I didn't die in my attempt to balance all those duties. So a couple of years later, my husband and I realized it was time for us to expand our own family. It was quite difficult, I must admit, deciding when to get pregnant, as it would mean putting aside the research that I would be undergoing at that moment. But well, no one ever said being a woman in the field of science would be simple. Even though there were many more women working in science, little or no attention was being put in the difference in salary from men, not mention the difficulties in order to find a balance between work and home duties.
Discrimination of women in science has always been a fact, as is the paradigmatic case of Rosalind Franklin, whose work with DNA structure was not recognized in a male-dominant scientific world. Today, women still have to face some difficulties if they want to succeed in research because of their gender. A study of Yale University compiled numerical data which reflects the remaining sexism present in scientific fields. 127 scientists were asked to review a job application of different women and men equally qualified. The reported conclusions showed that faculty members were prone to score higher than male candidates.
Once my son was born, I was on maternity leave for no more than 2 months, as I couldn't stop thinking about the project that I was carrying out at the university at that moment. So I pressured myself to go back to work as soon as possible, because in that case, we could pick up with the project we were doing. But to my surprise, when I got to the lab, I found out my mates had published the results of my experiment without asking me first, taking the credit of these results. That's when I decided I was better off without them. My startup company had started to grow and needed me. So I decided to quit my job at the university and focusing on my own business.
As it's been said previously, authorship in scientific publications is a controversial issue. Plagiarism is illegal, and in science it always implies a discredit for the researcher who does it. However, this kind of practice is not unusual. A study conducted by Donald McCabe at Rutgers University reported that 38% of students admitting to having copied from internet sources without citations. This data gives us an idea of how frequent and extended is plagiarism among students. Actually, these honest conducts are not only extended among students but also among scientific community. One example are results which are republished in different journals in order to increase the number of publications. In Alba's case, she became what is called a ghost author, a person who has contributed to our research but afterwards is not listed as an author.
At first, it wasn't easy. While the company was small enough, I could manage everything, from accounting to attending clients and working in the lab. But as the work kept growing, I had to look for help. I found especially useful the help of Maria. She was a lawyer who helped me with the privacy and security contract of the clients, as well as with the patent application when we needed them. From that point on, things started to go better and better. I think the fact of running your own company feels like raising your own child. You want it to be as good as possible. And that dedication was the one that launched this small company to be what it is today. Nowadays, this company is the biggest in Spain. We have expanded our working areas much more, but I think it still holds the values in which it was created. I have always tried to hire people that have the same passion to what they do as I did when I started, and I think all the mistakes I've made in my working career have also helped me to build this company as it is now.
That is why, in Alba's corporation, they always do a list of do's and don'ts, straightforward rules that any good scientific worker must follow. So, those and rules are: 1. Never sign the work in which you didn't participate. Such activity causes that a scientist is losing entire one's prestige and for other scientists is becoming a not credible person, what is leading to the fact that ever his or her next scientific work is not going to be treated seriously. 2. Use only those scientific methods which are well known to you. Using unknown research methods often leads to incorrect results or to their incorrect analysis, what is leading to the false conclusions and misinforming other scientists. 3. Write only such conclusions which are matching to the received results. Using counterfeit conclusions causes only the decline in the value of the scientific work, the decline in the prestige of scientists, as well as misinforming other scientists. Every properly received results of scientific researches must be accepted, even if they are not in the line with the expectations of the scientists. 4. Fight for the dignity of the research work and equal opportunities. Never let somebody to disregard your scientific work. Be aware of the value of your work and try to gain the respect of other scientists, not only for yourself, but also for your research unit. Fight with others for equal opportunities. 5. Do not plagiarize. Plagiarizing scientific articles of other scientists is a crime as a result of violating laws of the intellectual property. Apart from that, the main goal of scientific researchers is discovering new laws of science, rather than copying the old one. If everyone will plagiarizing the scientific results, world would never move forward. 6. Use animals for scientific researches only when it is really necessary. Have respect for other living creatures, which the same as you, feel pain and suffering. The abuse of animals is also a crime. Take also into account that products tested on animals are less attractive for the potential clients. 7. Never spread findings or personal details of patients without their written consent. Remember that spreading findings or personal details of patients without their written consent can be contrary to their dignity and drastically disturb their confidence in you. Moreover, this activity is punishable because you apply to medical confidentiality. Working with patients, always try to be open and honest. 8. Assess the influence of research results on the society. Always, before publishing results of your work, think about it, whether benefits get in the future will be commensurate with potential negative effects of your researches. Think also if the results of your research will have a positive impact on development of your society. 9. Evaluating others, always be objective. Remember that the evaluation of scientific articles or scientific projects of other scientists always must be honest, because it can affect on their further professional career. Never counterfeit, neither do not avoid giving a testimonial, even if it was supposed to be negative. 10. Never judge the other scientist after that is it a man or a woman. Nowadays, both women and men can be outstanding scientists, therefore always remember not to judge other person through her sex. Working with the other scientist, you always should be kind and friendly.